Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Germany once again, and this is another one of the beers that I brought back with me from a recent trip over to Munich, and I'm quite excited for this one today. We're going to stick to the city of Munich today, and we're reviewing a beer from a brewery who are considered by a number of people to be one of the pioneers of this kind of new wave of German craft beers that are coming out. So for this one we're doing my first review from Crew Republic, and this is the Rest in Peace. So it's a Barleywine ale at 10.1% ABV, and it should be really interesting. Now, normally the Barleywine isn't a style of beer that you would associate with Germany. Probably the strongest beer you're going to get over there traditionally is the Doppelbock, and I absolutely love German Doppelbocks. So it's just a very interesting time over there just now, because there's all of these people with really strong brewing expertise. Germany, of course, has a huge brewing heritage, and there's a number of people are starting to kind of focus on the American style craft beers now. So it's really interesting just to see how the Germans are taking those and kind of making them their own. I'm very jealous of my friend Peter at the Clueless Drinker, who gets to review these beers regularly, because the ones I've reviewed for you so far have been pretty damn good. So if you are particularly interested in these new wave German craft beers, make sure you have a look at his channel. I'll put the link to it in the description below, but I'm excited to try my first German barley wine and my first beer from Crew Republic as well, because Peter's told me these guys do some pretty good stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Crew Republic. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, of course. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you give the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Crew Republic then. So Crew Republic are based primarily in Munich, and they were founded back in 2011 by Tim Schneegela and Mario Hanel, who'd studied business originally, worked in the management consultancy business for a number of years, got bored of it, and then decided that they wanted to start their own brewery. But originally the company was called Kraft Ale Werkstatt, but they decided to change it because they felt that the Germans associated the word ale with the kind of English real ales, and obviously English real ales are kind of warm beers, they're flat. It's just really not what the Germans are into, and with the standard of beer that they have, you can't really blame them, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of the English bitters. I like the porters and the stouts and things like that, but I'm not a great fan of kind of non-carbonated beer, so I understood where they're coming from. But when they rebranded, Tim and Mario were joined by Manuel Schultz and Jan Herdlitzka, who were actually involved in marketing and sales, and they also hired Richard Hodges. And Richard Hodges is an American brewmaster, but he came to Germany to study brewing and learn more about the German traditional beers. He actually now runs the Berliner Berg brewery, which is one that I'm going to check out in the coming videos. But initially they started out as a gypsy brewery, and they were brewing in Landshut since I think between 2012 and 2015. But since 2015 they now have their own brewery at Unterschleissheim, which is in the northern suburbs of the city, and it's actually quite a nice looking building. I think they might actually be looking to open up a brewery tap up there at some point. They might already have it open, I'm not quite sure about that, but they do have their own base since 2015, and it looks very kind of cool and very shiny and things like that. So you can check out the pictures of that in the brewery website below. But like I said, these guys are considered by a number of people to be one of the kind of pioneers of bringing the IPAs and things like that into Germany. So a very interesting brewery, and like I said, they're producing imperial stouts and barley wines and stuff like this. So if you want to try some of these new wave German craft beers, Crew Republic, I guess, are one of the breweries where this whole thing kicked off. So make sure you try some of their beers and see how you go, and I'm certainly interested to try this one. When I looked at their website, I think they've got 7 or 8 beers in their core range. They've got pale ales, IPAs, I think there was a lager beer, a kind of Helles beer in there as well, an imperial stout. There was this guy, the Rest in Peace, and there was a few other bits and bobs. So this beer originally started its life as one of their experimental series, the X series, and I think it was number 2.3. But just to tell you a little bit about this beer then before we open it up, this is a 10.1% barley wine. It's hot with Hercules, which is a really nice German, slightly higher alpha acid bittering hop, and Fugels and East Kent Goldings from England obviously, and it's got a malt base of Pilsner and Crystal malt. So I'm really interested to see how this one comes out with the German hops and the English hops. It's probably going to lean a little bit more towards the English style barley wine rather than the American one, of course, but it should be a very interesting beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork then again before we open it up. There you can see the nice Crew Republic thing. All the beers tend to have a very similar kind of art schematic, if you like. like, but they all just tend to be a little bit different colours. You can see there, I do like the top label on this with the cross, the rest in peace, and you can see that's also on the bottle cap, this one. That's actually quite cool that they seem to do different bottle caps for each different beer. It does tell you about the hops and malts and things on the back of this. I do like the Crew Republic symbol there with the grenade since 2011. It says on the front there as well. That's really quite nice, and it just tells you a little bit about the beer on the back as well. So yeah, it says this one is best before the 2nd of March 2020. So I could have aged this one a little bit, but I think it had been in the shop for a wee while. They told me this one, it was about a year old or so. And you do want the barley wine to be at least 6 months old before you drink it, so it should be good anyway. And obviously I was excited to try my first German barley wine. And I'll tell you something, you can smell some of these nice brown sugars and red fruity characters coming out of this already. But that looks really nice. So yeah, as you can see, it's poured a really nice kind of, I think it's fair to describe that one as an almost kind of, it's almost a little bit like a kind of light chestnut colour. There's a little bit of a mahogany note there. The head on this one, it's a 3/4 finger of a frothy, slightly beigey cream head. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head there. But in terms of colour, if I hold this up to the light, it's actually a nice, it's a really deep dark orange actually. It's almost a kind of orangey chestnut, if that makes sense. Maybe a little bit of a kind of reddish mahogany note to it as well. But I think the best descriptor for this beer is a very, very dark, rich, kind of orangey amber colour. It looks very, very nice. It's a bit brighter than some of the barley wines I've come across before. A lot of them usually have this kind of slightly darker brown colour, but of course the colour, usually it's dependent on the malts that you're using, of course. But the colour doesn't really matter, kind of, as long as it actually tastes good. It depends on the type of malts that you use, and also how long the boil is. And I think with a barley wine, you do tend to boil it just for a little bit longer, so that makes the wort a little bit darker. But yeah, that smells really, really nice. So with this one, there's a nice dark toasted brown sugar to this, which is quite interesting. The crystal malt always gives you a nice bit of I always find the crystal malt's usually biscuity. I'm surprised they didn't use some kind of caramel and things like this. It's got a surprisingly kind of a simple malt base to it, this one. Usually the barley wines, they'll use a couple of malts in the sort of just in the kind of base, but then they'll put a few different ones in to kind of sort of just give it a little bit more complexity. But this one is fairly kind of straight up in its composition. But certainly it does smell really quite nice. So there's a lot of brown sugar in there. It's quite a dark, kind of toasted brown sugar. It almost reminds me of some of these kind of sweet cereals that you can get. It reminds me a little bit of that. But there's a nice kind of bready note underpinning it as well. There's almost that German kind of brown, I think you call it the pumpernickel bread. You can pick up a little bit of that out of this beer. But there's some woody, maybe slightly nutty notes in there as well. But really, it's leaning towards these kind of nice, dark, toasted brown sugars. I really do like how that kind of jumps out at this one. The barley wine, of course, is the big brother of the double IPA. All these styles, the pale ales, the IPAs, the double IPAs, and the barley wine, of course, they're all related to each other, but they've just got different malt to hop ratios. But they are all interconnected, and the barley wine is the big brother of all three of those. But yeah, that's a nice smelling beer. There's a little bit of earthy hop comes out of it. You can pick up a little bit of that kind of grassy floral thing. I think that's the Hercules trying to push its way out. Always remember that's got quite a spicy floral aromatic note. The German noble hops, of course, are very distinctive. They've got a little bit of that sweet earthiness. Then they have this really quite distinctive floral quality it's quite hard to describe actually, but if you smell it, you do, after you've tasted a few beers and things like that, and a few German beers, it really does get ingrained in your mind. And I do think you can smell a little bit of that floral character from the Hercules here, but you're definitely getting some of the earthiness, which will be both from the Fugels and the East Kent Goldings. The Fugels, of course, is known for giving you that kind of ashy note, and you can pick that up here. The Fugels hop's beautiful if you use it in stouts and darker beers, but if you use it in things like pale ales and golden ales, I just find it horrible. So I'm interested to see how it comes out in the barley wine. But yeah, there's a lot of nice red fruity notes there. You can smell there's some figs, raisins, plums, and it's got a little bit of an almost kind of cough medicine quality to it, the aroma in this beer. But the barley wine is one of the more kind of complex beer styles, so as I always say, just take a little bit of time and mull over the aroma of the beer before you actually try it yourself. because it's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskey and sake and things like this. But yeah, this one should be really quite nice. So this one is the Rest in Peace, a 10.1% barley wine from Crew Republic Brewery in Munich in Germany. Let's get stuck into this beer, my very first German barley wine. Prost. Yeah, that's a pretty good beer. It definitely leans more towards the English style barley wine than anything else. Of course, the American ones tend to be a little bit more kind of caramelly and fruity and things like that, and some of them have a good bit of that kind of floral aromaticity to them. It's the same with the Scotch ales, of course. The American versions of the Scotch ales are a little bit more sugary, like more kind of caramelly and fruity. But the English barley wine is distinctive for having that kind of bready note, but also some of the earthy hop. You really get the earthy hops, and this one really, the Fuggles hop, you can feel that coming out in this beer as soon as you get into the aftertaste of it. It's quite, these English hops are quite prominent in this one. So in terms of the two different barley wine style brackets you're going to get, it's definitely an English barley wine, and that, to be honest, is what I expected. Yeah, it's quite a nice beer. As I've said to you before, I do tend to prefer the American barley wines to the English ones, but I have to say, in terms of an English barley wine, this is pretty good. And as I try more and more of them, I have to say I am warming a little bit to the English style of barley wine. But that's good. So yeah, with this one, you know, it kind of has everything you'd expect. It's one of these ones where it doesn't have as much complexity as you can get out of the style, but you're going to get a good idea from this beer. You can tell straight away that it's well done and it's well crafted and things like that. That's the first thing you're going to get with that, and that's one of these, I always find that's a bit of a typically German thing. In some ways they keep things simple, but they do it well, and this beer is certainly one of those ones. It has all the flavours you expect, and they come out at just the right levels. So yeah, in the middle of your palate then, you can feel a little bit of that light sort of pale and crystal malt. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. For me, on top of that, I'm getting a little bit of a slightly thicker bready note, and it comes out a little bit more as you get further and further into the aftertaste. There is a little bit of a kind of cereally character in there, and it surprises me that you do get that flavour, because you would expect them to use a little bit of an English malt there, but I think both the pale ale malts, or the Pilsner malts that they're using in this one are probably German, and I would guess that the crystal malts are maybe coming from America or something like that. They might be German as well. I think the Germans do produce crystal malts, but it does have a little bit of that almost English malty quality to it, which is interesting. On top of that kind of pale malty base, you can definitely pick up a little bit of a kind of roasted grainy character and some sort of a bready note as well, although the malt base is quite light on this one. But I certainly like how it comes across. But in the middle of the palate you get this nice dark kind of caramelly note coming out of the beer. There's a wee bit of a slightly lighter biscuity note. As the flavour progresses, you start to get this almost kind of a honeycomb flavour comes out of the malt base a little bit more, and again there's a wee bit of an almost kind of spiced woody character in the aftertaste. That kind of roasted grainy note, it almost evolves into just a little bit of this kind of spiced woody note, which is really quite interesting, and there are some kind of nutty characters to the beer in the aftertaste as well. As you move out towards the side, the kind of sides of your palate, there's definitely a little bit of this just nice kind of nutty character. So it's a really interesting beer, this, and for one that has quite a simple malt base, it's kind of surprising, and it's also really interesting actually that you can get the depth in the malt base out of that, and that gives you an idea of how much the yeast kind of contributes to the beer as well actually, because with a simple malt base like that, the yeast, you can feel with this one, the yeast obviously is kind of building up quite a wee bit. But yeah, that's really quite interesting, that. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer, with this one, as I was saying, on the back corners of the palate, you can really pick up this nice earthiness there. That's definitely that you can pick up that it's English hops in this. If you tasted this blind, you would know right away if you're how do you say, if you're somewhat versed in kind of hops and things like that, you would be able to tell straight away that this is English hops, because you've got that nice that slightly darker earthiness. It's very distinctive from the slightly sweeter earthiness that you get from German hops, but you can taste that little bit of ashy note that you'll get from the Fugels. Then as you come further forward, it just it becomes a little bit more herbal, and again, that's the English hops. And on the front corners of the palate, there's a little bit of that slightly spicy floral aromaticity. That for me is the German Hercules. And then around the front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit more lighter and grassy, and it's got that almost kind of lemongrassy quality. And again, I do suspect that's the Hercules, but the two English hops in this, the Kent Goldings and the Fugels, they can contribute to that a little bit. So it has kind of what you'd expect from the hops, and then just behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you're going to get this nice little oily bubble where the red fruity esters start to come out of the beer. But yeah, this is really interesting. It's got a kind of almost cakey, when my mouth is starting to adjust to this beer, I'm starting to get some of these kind of dark, kind of alcoholic cakey notes out of this beer, which is quite interesting. But with on the red fruity side of things, it's definitely for me an almost datey flavour that's coming out of this one. There's a wee bit of a kind of raisin and plummy sharpness to it, but to me it's more a kind of medicinal, herbal, kind of cakey, datey sort of flavour that's coming out of this beer. It's a really interesting barley wine, this, and it is interesting to see how the German hops can be incorporated into that, and the ale yeast strain as well obviously is doing quite a bit of work in this one. But it's a fairly kind of straight up English barley wine. It's not one of the most complex ones that you're going to come across, although it does have more than you would think when you look at the fact it's just got the two malts in it. But they've done a nice job with this. That was the main thing I could tell right away with this beer, is that it is well crafted. And I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again. You know, at 10.1% though, it is certainly a beer that you're going to have as a treat rather than one you're going to session, of course, which again, the barley wine is something that you would do that with. But in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I would say it's full-bodied, carbonation soft on this one. It's a big oily mouthfeel you're getting from this. There's a good bit of alcohol warmth coming out of this one. The hops are very, very smooth. There's not too much in the way of bitterness, just a little bit, I would say. The malt base has a good bit of sweetness to it, but it also has a bit of a kind of darker, roasty note, and you do get a little element of bitterness from it, which, as I was saying, that makes me think there would have been some English malt in there, but I think they've primarily used German and maybe American malts as well, and there's a good little bit of a kind of red, fruity ester to the beer as well, which gives the beer a little bit of juiciness on the back end, and the aftertaste really, it's some of that kind of earthy character from the English hops that's lying there, and that almost medicinal, herbal and slightly fruity quality that's coming out of it as well. But overall, it's a really interesting beer, and I'm very glad that I got to try it, my first German barley wine. So if you get the chance to try the Rest in Peace from Crew Republic, I'd say it's a fairly it's a well crafted English style barley wine, this one. Don't go into this one expecting an American barley wine with the big juicy fruits and the good bit of hoppy bitterness. This one for me is definitely more of an English barley wine, but they've done a very good job with it, and on the basis of this I'd love to try some of their other beers. I'd love to see them have a wee go at a Scotch ale. I love trying Scotch ales from different parts of the world, but I'd want to have a go at some of their IPAs and stuff obviously, but I think an Imperial Stout from these guys could be very interesting as well. But it's been really cool to review my first beer from these guys, so thank you for watching my beer reviews. I hope you've enjoyed my take on this one, the Rest in Peace from Crew Republic. Let me know your own thoughts on the beer in the comments section below if you've tried it before, and let me know what your favourite ones are from Crew Republic as well. But until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Do let me know your own thoughts on this beer, like I said. Check out my social media and make sure you try some of these Crew Republic beers. It's been interesting to try this one, and once again thank you for watching. A really interesting beer, and it is cool to see the Germans starting to take the initiative with these American and English style beers and Belgian beers. They're doing lots of stuff, so just check out some of these new wave German craft beers. Prost.